Welcome back to Women in Focus. Our Woman in Focus today is Nita. Nita, what a pretty name. Mom and Dad, who chose your name?
Oh, I think my mom did. I think so. I think
Yes.
my mom likes short,
Yes.
sweet names. We all have short names, short last name, short first name. It's a total of 8 letters in my entire name.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, but that's it. It's just Nita. It's not short for anything, and
No.
that's all it is.
So you talk about your sister. So are you just the two of you?
No, I have 3 sisters.
Okay.
So I'm the eldest of 4.
Ah,
I have 2 sisters that are one a year and a half, one 2.5 years younger than me.
Right.
Then a long gap.
Yes.
And one that's 13 years younger than me.
holy macro. So you, the oldest in the family then.
That's right.
Lot of responsibilities as growing up?
I think so. Maybe not all that different than what other families were experiencing back in the
Yes.
70s and 80s, but yeah, you know, it's busy. My parents ran a business. My mom was working in the business with my dad.
Right.
I remember lots of days getting the phone call right after school. Can you
Right.
prepare this dal and this and cut up these vegetables, and I'll get it all together when I get home. And so
Right.
we were doing sort of basic cooking.
Right.
My younger sister was quite a bit younger, and
Yes.
so a lot of childcare responsibility with her.
Yeah. So you had your practice right there.
I think I did.
Yeah.
I really did, because I actually remember in the good old days of cloth diapers, I remember
Right.
making diapers with my mom, for my
Right.
sister, a lot of child care, but done as a family, like the
Right.
3 older ones, us 3 older ones, all doing that together. And when the youngest got married, I mean,
Yeah.
it really felt like I was giving my first child away.
I think at that age, 13 years, and to have a sibling being born, I was at that age when my youngest
Right.
brother and sister were born. They were twins.
Right.
And so you do feel as if you are responsible for
Right.
them, you know.
Yeah.
So and I think that's exactly what you felt.
A little bit, yeah, and a little bridging of the gap between
Right.
her generation, which really is,
Yes.
hate to make myself older than I am, but she is a younger generation, and then the generation of my parents. So we were often the 3 sisters that she could confide in,
Right.
and then we would take the message to mom and dad and
Oh.
see if we could.
Talking about confiding, how was that in the family? You said parents were conservative. So was it expected that you would come to mom and dad and say, or was not expected that you would come and say, I found a guy and I want to marry him?
I would say probably it was not expected.
No.
I think we grew up mainly mainly being told that, you know, we'd have sort of an arranged, or, you know, where you would meet somebody, that kind of situation.
Right.
You know, I believe it was very important to my parents that I
Yes.
marry somebody of Jain background.
Yes.
As a Vancouverite yourself, you probably
Yes.
know it's not a very large community.
Very small.
Very small community. And then, you know, the difficulty with Indians is you can be from the same, for example, religious background, but then your
Yes.
languages might be different. And then it's a
Exactly.
different culture. So
Yes.
we came from a Hindi-speaking family.
Right.
From the Delhi area. There are lots of Jain families from Gujarat that speak Gujarati. The
Yes.
food is different, the culture is different, the language is different. And even that becomes a barrier, which,
Of course.
you know, I think my non-Indian friends growing up, they just would shake their head. They didn't
Yeah, they
understand what that meant at all. You know, you're from India, it's all the same, right? But it's
No.
India's not one country. It's
No.
so many different. Wow, sometimes things just happen to you that you have no control over.
Exactly.
I think that's really what happened to me. Is I
So
just met,
how did you meet him?
Okay, so I when I finished high school,
Yeah.
I took a job at Vancity Credit Union.
Okay.
And I was working as just a frontline staff there,
Right.
part-time.
Yes.
And I would do that every summer. And sometimes I would do it over Christmas break or whatever.
Right.
It helped to pay for university.
Yeah.
And I must have been there in my 3rd summer. And I had some colleagues that kind of saw this person walk in and, I don't know, got it in their head, maybe watched me. Maybe
Yeah.
there was something in my expression that
Right.
suggested that I was interested. But one of my work colleagues made it sort of his mission for the entire summer that he was going to somehow introduce them.
Introduce both of you.
And he did. He pulled a bit of a fast one and called him into the branch on some pretense that wasn't really a problem with his bank account, and then kind of pushed me forward and said, "Here you go, talk to him." And so we talked, and I think the first time we met, we must have talked for 3 or 4 hours.
No kidding.
And he swept me off my feet. What can I say?
Wow.
He really did.
And how difficult was it to tell mom and dad about that?
Yeah, that was, it was difficult. I think I knew what the expectations were of me, and being the eldest, setting that example for the 3 to come was a lot of responsibility. And I might get a little choked up talking about it because it doesn't matter how many years have gone by. It's lessened.
Yeah.
But it was a really hard time. And I didn't know anybody else who had gone through this.
Right.
A lot of people have since then. And in fact, some people had even at that time, but just hadn't talked about it. So I had nobody to confide in, really. Thank goodness for my 2 sisters that were just younger than me. And one of my cousins, she was also really instrumental in me.
Wow.
Just saying, at some point, I always knew what my parents wanted for me was the best. But at some point, you have to take that responsibility into your own hands and know that what you are doing is also good for you. And so we had I did finally confide in my parents. I don't think my dad was happy even at the time I was getting married.
Yeah.
I think my mom she just wanted to keep the peace.
Yes.
And, I think she was really happy for me, but she also had to spend the rest of her life with my dad.
Yeah.
And I think that we just had a good understanding amongst us. And so although there were really difficult times, lots of late night crying sessions on my part, my mom's part.
Right.
It all came together, and we had a very small wedding. Just
a family.
Well, I'd be lying if I told you my parents were there. They weren't.
Yeah.
My 2 sisters that were in town at that time, one of my sisters had gotten married 6 months earlier, so she'd already moved away and wasn't able to make it. But it was just a very small wedding we had in the park, and it was followed by a reception that my in-laws were really keen to have for the community.
I want to talk a little bit about that. I know it's an emotional time and incident for you and a part of your life. But many people go through that, and many people don't realize that, many parents don't realize that what they are putting their children through is very traumatic. And I wanna touch that a little bit, if you don't mind. But we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back. Nita Jain is our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back.